Hi everyone, welcome back to another video, and in this video we are going to learn how to design a session store, and we'll be doing that using something called as DynamoDB. Now this is the third video in the DynamoDB series. We have already covered the DynamoDB fundamentals and we have covered the advanced topics as well. So in this video we are going to apply that knowledge in order to create a session store. Okay, so let's get started. So before watching this video, the prerequisite that you watch DynamoDB fundamentals video, as I've already said that we have covered DynamoDB fundamentals and advanced topics of DynamoDB, but this particular video does not require you to know the DynamoDB advanced things, just the prerequisite that you have watched the DynamoDB fundamentals. So if you have not watched it, I would highly recommend to go and watch this video first and then come back for this video. But if you want a complete understanding of everything that we are going to talk about, then I highly recommend you to go through the advanced DynamoDB and the Redis replication video as well, because we are going to be talking about a bit of Redis in this video as well. So let's get started. So let's first talk about what session store actually is. Okay, so session store is nothing but session storage for user session data. Wow, that was a really great definition. Okay, so now but the basic definition is this only, that we store the user session data inside of a particular storage system. Now let's try to understand why do we need this. Okay, let's say that you have an application and the user is coming into that application. Now every time user has to do anything with that application, he has to send username and password in the request. Now this is bad for many reasons. Why? This is insecure. This is not a good user behavior that we are giving to the user. Not a good user behavior. Third thing is user use personal information in the password, so that will be leaked as well. So we don't want that, and that makes our application not so awesome. So what can we do? Okay, so what can we do is that when the first time user comes in to our application, we are going to return the user with a session ID, and with that session ID user can store the session ID, and through that we will identify the user. Okay, but what session is? Session is just a working segment of authenticated user. So let's say the user comes up, we created a session inside of our DB. Okay, now this will be active for, let's say, 7 days, and then for 7 days we'll give that user this ID. So for every time when the user comes, he will send this ID to us, and we will say that okay, this user has been authenticated for the next 7 days and 7 days only. Now for this 7 days period, this thing is called as a session. This 7 day is called a single session for this particular user. Okay, so session has a lot of properties. First, it needs to be short term. It should not be more than 7 days, and it should be around 30 minutes to 7 days. Why? Because if it is more than 7 days, then the chances of this session ID getting leaked gets increased. Okay, another property is one user can have n number of sessions. User can have device 1, which is their phone, device 2, their TV, device 3, that is their tab. So this all will create a number of sessions. So single users can have n sessions. Okay, now each session needs to be unique. It should have a unique ID. This ID cannot be used by another device or another session. Okay, and then last is that user identification should be done via session by our awesome application. Okay, now let's see how the entire flow works for a session ID. User, when they first come into the application, they send a username and password. This is the one-time thing. Okay, this is a one-time thing, and we return them with the session ID. They store the session ID locally. Okay, now every time user do anything, let's say create a post or write a comment, we take this, they send this session ID into this request, and we take the session ID and we check inside of this session stored that if it exists or not. If this exists or not. If it does not exist, we ask the user to log in again. If it exists, then we process whatever they want to do and send back the success response. Okay, so this is how the entire flow works for a session store. We are not going to be talking about this part, but we'll be talking about this part, ki how to design this. Okay, let's get started. So before going into the actual design, when you see any design in the internet or any other YouTube, they use Redis for a session store. Okay, so Redis is a good option. It is de facto for a session store, but it does not come without any flaws. Not that DynamoDB has not any flaws. DynamoDB has a bunch of trade-offs as well, but Redis is de facto. Now let's understand why. Okay, Redis is fast. Okay, Redis has temporary storage. We need the fast speed as well, because if the user is trying to create a post and now we are taking time just to authenticate if the user is authenticated or not, is the user correct or not, then the entire creation of post will take a lot of time. So it needs to be fast. Redis is temporary, so the session stores, the session is temporary as well. We don't need to persist it forever. We just need to persist it from 30 minutes to 7 days, and it needs to auto expire. So let's say that after 7 days it needs to auto expire. I don't need to run a cron and go over all my session keys and check if this needs to be expired or not, and if let's say user does not come for next 6 months. So I don't need that session key to saved in my DB for next 6 months. So these are the properties that makes the Redis very good option to work with. But what about DynamoDB? Okay, now let's talk about DynamoDB as well. It is fast. Yes, it gives you a single digit response time. Okay, so I would say it is fast. Okay. 9 auto expire keys. Yes, DynamoDB does that as well. It is cheaper than Redis. Redis is expensive. Okay, DynamoDB is cheap. Now this gives us the option to persist storage. You can persist using Redis as well, don't get me wrong, but it is the nature of DynamoDB that lets you persist that storage, so you don't have to do anything out of the box or any configuration. It gives you non-volatile persistent storage. And another and main benefit is it is very simple to use. DynamoDB is just plug and play. This is why DynamoDB is so popular. It gives you so many benefits and it is very simple to use. Okay, that's why we are going with AWS for our session store today. Okay, now let's talk about the requirements for a bit. Requirement is user should be able to create a new session. Okay, session should be expired in 7 days automatically. It could be any arbitrary number, just I have taken 7 for now. Okay, now the third is user can delete all the sessions manually. So if you have seen in your Google account, if you have logged in your account, let's say at 5 devices, you have the option to log out from each and every device in case of any breach. So we need to have that feature as well. And then user can have different sessions. So that was I was talking about. One user can have n number of sessions. And then user token should be unique and should be validated on every request. Okay. So these are all the requirements, and let's try to tackle them one by one. Okay. Let's try to actually go into the design now. Now, first identify the entities. There are two entities that we can see. One is session identity, another is user identity. Now, user identity can be represented by the username of the user, since it is going to be unique. Let's just assume that it is going to be a unique one. Okay, because in most of the apps nowadays, the username is the unique identifier for the user. Okay, so we have a primary key and we have attributes. Okay, so as we have earlier talked about, that DynamoDB gives you two options. It could be we can have a simple primary key, or we can have composite primary key. Okay, so now generally in all of your applications you are going to be using a composite primary key, but in a simple application like the session store, we don't need a composite primary key. we can just work with a simple primary key. Let's see how. So for this session store, we will make the primary key as session ID. Okay, now session ID would be any unique identifier that is generated by our application. It should be unique. Okay, now the attributes, it will have a username attribute, and then it will have a expired at attribute. Now expired at will be a epoch. Okay, so epoch is just when it is a integer number that has been started from 1970 and gets incremented at every second, and that is epoch. So let's say that 1700609 is from 1970 till that particular point in time where this number lies. So it could be in 2015, it could be in 2025, or whatever year that is. I've just taken an example. Okay, now let's try to understand why we have taken this as primary key. Okay, why do we need this? So we need this because what will be our access patterns. So first we need to be thinking that, so user should be able to create a new session. This does not require any such information other than username, and we need username for this. Okay, we need session ID for this. Okay, and since I've created today, so I know expiry date today. Okay, expire at key, when it will get expired. Okay, then user should be able, the session should be able to be expired in 7 days automatically. We have already set the date for that. So this would be current date plus 7 days. Simple. Okay, user can delete all the sessions. Okay, we have stored all of the sessions. Okay, now the deletion part we will come at last. Okay, user can have different sessions. Can this design has different sessions? Yes, this session ID can be of user 1, this session ID can be of user 1, and this one again can be of user 1. So yes, a single user can have multiple sessions in this design. Okay, now user token should be unique and should be validated on every request. Now this is a very important thing. Okay, now let's come back to it. We'll go back and see how this is working. User will send us session ID on each post. So we have that session ID. We need to send that session ID into a DB to check if it exists or not. This is the only business logic that this needs to have. So we store the session ID as like this, so that whenever the users send us the session ID, we can directly search that session ID into our data store. Now if we had made username as primary key, then we would require either session name to username mapping, where we will fetch the username and we can fetch the session ID, or we will require on every step the user send us. Now if we only keep the session ID, then user don't even need to send their own username. They can just send the payload along with the session ID, and we will check what user it belongs to. So that's why we have taken primary key as session ID only, so that we can check these information, and there could be other meta as well. Okay, there could be other metadata as well for the user that we need to keep for a requirement, but since this is a very simple example, we don't require all of this, so we have only kept username and expire at. Okay, so that's why we have we have another data for another user to have this session ID and gets expired at this point. Okay, now let's try to see how we would use this DB to solve for all the requirements. So the first requirement was that user should be able to create new session. Okay, let's see how can user do that. So these are the DynamoDB queries that I have written, and these are in Python language, but these are pretty much similar in any other language. Okay, so first what we'll do is we will calculate the expire at time. Okay, this is the calculation for expire at time. What we are doing is we are taking the now date time plus we are increasing the delta with 7 days, and then we are getting a epoch out of it. So that is what is carried at in expire set. Now since since we have talked about this in for DynamoDB fundamentals as well, DynamoDB interact with client to DynamoDB. Let's say that this is your DynamoDB. The interaction happens through HTTP APIs. Okay, so this is the connection model. So we don't need to actually create any connection pool or anything. We just need to tell the identification of the DDB along with the AWS secret keys, and the client can talk to it through HTTP APIs, which is inbuilt in the AWS SDK. Okay, so this DynamoDB is the AWS SDK. Now when we call this thing, it internally calls the AWS APIs. Okay, so now we are going to put an item inside of a table name. So if you see that we have given it a table name as session store, and we are going to store the unique ID uuid.uuid4, username as user1, and expiries at whatever we calculated, and we are adding a conditional expression here. What does conditional expression does is attribute not exist. Which attribute should not exist? Session token. So what we are essentially doing is that let's say that our UUID gave the same key twice. Okay, so we don't want to update the user's information. What we need to do is we need to check if this exists, then don't do it. But if this attribute does not exist, then and only then create it. Okay, so let's say today it exists, but in the next 7 days, okay, 7 days later it will not exist. Then same session ID can be used, but right now since it exists, we don't want to use it. So we are directly incorporating it in the database query that this attribute should not exist. Which attribute? Session token should not exist before. Okay, so this is the create query through which we can create a new row in the DynamoDB, and a new session will be created for the user. Okay, so we have done this. Let me just, yeah. Now let's go for the second query, that is user should be able to read. Now read is going to be very simple. User is going to give us the session token. We are going to initiate the call through the table name, and then we are going to pass the session token in the request, and if it exists, it will give us the token, give us the entry, or in DynamoDB case we call it item, and if it does not exist, it will give us nothing. No error, just nothing. Okay, empty response. So we have done this as well. Users should be validated in every step, because since we are able to fetch it, user can validate it at every step. Now let's go to this requirement. User should session should be expired in 7 days automatically. Now how can we expire it automatically? So DynamoDB has this thing called as auto expire, called as TTL. So we can tell the DynamoDB it's TTL, and it will auto expire. Let me just find that table again. Yeah, so as you can see, we have expire at, and we are just giving it a TTL. Now what this TTL will do is TTL will remove the entry from DynamoDB in the next 48 hours. Okay, it will remove in the next 48 hours. So so this thing can be taken care of. So if I have put this TTL, and this is the next 7 days. So once this has elapsed, then in the next 48 hours this entire row will be removed. Okay, so this requirement is completed as well. So since I can put it as TTL, I don't need to do anything about it. Now there's one caveat. This particular item gets removed after 48 hours. Now let's say user has created this at T0. Okay, this has been created at T0. Now at T7 days, Okay, this got expired. This should have been expired, but this is not expired. It will take plus a t of 48 hours. Then at this time, like this particular time from t7 to plus 48 hours, this session token can be reused. Now this is a very big security risk. We don't want that, because if this gets leaked, then anyone else can try to impersonate this particular user. So what we can do is we can modify this query. We can modify the read query by checking this expired at by the current time. So how would the query go? So this is the read query which we are modifying just for this specific ways. So let's say that we have a session token that user has given us, and we will try to calculate the current epoch as well, what is the current time. Okay, now similarly as last query, read query, we will keep the table name, and we'll use the key condition expression where we are going to check that is this token equals to this token. Okay, now this is one very special thing that we are passing is filter expression. Now what filter expression does is that first it will try to fetch this. Okay, now this let's say that after t7 the db has given us this item. Okay, now once this item has been returned to the has been fetched, now it will not return us now as of yet. It will now filter. How it will filter? It will check that expire at should be greater than now, which is current epoch. If this is true, then and only then the entire query will return you the response, the item. Otherwise it will not give us. Now what are these expression attribute values? So how DynamoDB works is there are multiple expressions, and these expressions are to be declared explicitly, and their value are to be given separately. So here we are saying that session token, that is the name of the primary key, and that needs to be same as the token. If you see the colon, right? So we pass at the attribute value in the attribute values. Now in the filter expression also, the expires at is here. Okay, expire at is the field in the DynamoDB, but now does not exist, because now we are declaring it here in the expression values. Okay, if you want, you can just tell me. I can go into a very detail and how condition expression and filter expression works, and we will look into another example, but currently that is out of the scope. In the scope is the filter expression. So now if the expires at is more than the current timestamp, then and only then we will get that entry. Otherwise we won't get that entry, and that's how we can ensure that even at lazy expire at lazy TTL we are not having any security risk, and it is built into the DynamoDB layer only, in the query layer only, so that using our application there would be no edge cases. Okay, nice. So this we have done. User has different sessions. This we have covered as well, since user can create using the same. This has been done through this. Now we are at the last one. User can delete all sessions. Now this is very important, and this is something our current architecture of the table, a current design of the table cannot do. So how do we achieve this? Since we are using DynamoDB, we don't want to change the design. So what can we do? And we don't even have to change the design. This is how it should be done. That once you have this requirement, you created the DynamoDB. Now the access pattern has been changed. Since the DynamoDB designing relies on the access patterns only. So initially our access pattern was to read the session ID. We have done that. Now the another access pattern is that we need to fetch through the username. We cannot use a select query like in RDS, because this does not support, DynamoDB does not support that. And so what can we do? we can create a GSI. Okay, so this is a main table, that is session store. What we can do is we can create a GSI on the username attribute, and this in the GSI, this username will become the primary key and attribute will become a single session ID. So for a single user, since there are 3 session IDs, so for a primary key there we can see that we have 3 IDs, and this is how we can create the GSI out of it. Okay, so single user would have multiple session IDs, and user 2 have another ID. So by this way we can actually fetch all of the session IDs by the username, and then we can delete each one of them. So let's see the query for it. So if you see the query, we have a username that we are taking. Now what we are doing is we are running the query on the table name as we were doing for all of the queries. Now here this time we will also pass something called as index name. Let's call our GSI as user index. Okay, so we are passing the index as well, and watch specific index we are querying. Now we will put the key expression, that is the username. We are passing it right here, and then we are using the this username value in the expression attribute value. Okay, so now it will give us a list of items. If there are no items, then it will give us an empty list, and we are declaring here as well the default should be empty list. But if there are entries, it will be stored in the items. Now we will loop inside of the items, take every item and fetch the session token out of it, since it will give us these IDs. Okay, but we need to delete these things for, let's say, user 1. So we right now have the IDs. Now what we'll do is we will tell the DynamoDB to delete the item in the session store where the session token is equal to session token that we have just extracted. And this is how we can let the user delete all of the entries, all the sessions in a single in a single way, so that there won't be any security risk. And with this we have covered our last requirement of DynamoDB as well. So now the user is able to create new session. User should be able to sessions are getting expired in 7 days. User can delete all the sessions manually if they want, and user can have multiple sessions. User token should be unique. These are unique, and user should be validated on every request. Now session can be sent in every request so that it can be validated, and these are the 4 queries that we need to use. Now you can ask me is ki yes Sarthak, I'm using, let's say, Instagram. Okay, I am using Swiggy, or let's say YouTube, but these applications don't ask me like in every 7 days to log in again. Then my application is going to give a bad user behavior. Now you are correct, because I also, if I am designing an application, I don't want the user to keep login. Now what I can implement is I can implement auto renewal of the sessions. So the session logic will be at 7 days only. The session will expire in 7 days, but at I can introduce certain parameters. So I was talking about metadata right here, that we can have metadata where I can include the IP address of user. I can have device ID, okay, and I can track user network calls, okay, for my application. So based on this I can check if the user is if user has been user is safe or not safe. Okay, if it is safe user, then I can auto renew it. I can just expire this one, I can create a new one, and user don't even have to know about it. User doesn't care, user doesn't have to relog in, and the session will be renewed for the another 7 days or whatever time you want to keep. this is how you can keep renewing your sessions and user doesn't have any bad experience where user has to come up and relog in at every 7 days. Okay, so that is it, everyone. Thank you a lot for watching the video. If you have made it this far, I highly recommend you to go and watch my Apache Lucene video, where we have talked about how Twitter, Wikipedia and Swiggy search works. When you type in anything, when you type any text, how does it able to come up with such correct results. And even if you type let's say you want to search for Apple and you have just wrote PPLE, then how is it able to find the apple from it? So these all things is covered in this video. This is a really good video, and if you like this video, please like, comment, share with your friends, and please subscribe so that I can keep making more videos like that. Okay, I'll see you in next one. Bye bye.